Hey folks, it's Art Wolf. Welcome. This bad boy just showed up, so we're going to take a look through it. This is the second and probably the last, at least for now, of the Grail game series. And for a lot of folks, this, along with War in Europe, which do not really use the same system, by the way. There's ways to put the two together, but that was the subject of an old article, a series in, I forget whether it was Moves or Fire and Movement magazine, about putting the two together, but they are not out of the box compatible. So what we have here is War in the Pacific, I believe 1978, from SPI. It is 43 years old at this point, and what we have is a fairly beat up box. All four corners are intact, although this one is fairly dinged, and there's some box spreading, so it's a bit miraculous. And as you can probably see, there's substantial evidence of water damage here. I mean, if I didn't know better, I would say that this whole thing was immersed briefly and left in a basement to dry. And then when we get to the inside, we'll notice that the box bottom has a blown corner. This is probably repairable in a way that's not going to be too bad. And of course, I'm going to just take all of the components out because the box is by far the most delicate and beat up part of the whole thing. So you can see definite signs of water damage in the box bottom as well. Now we have two of the old SPI counter trays. These appear to be in pretty nice shape. A lot of times on these trays, the lid does not really latch down, and you can overfill compartments and make sure that happens. This one does not look to be too bad, and it is in pretty nice shape too. Both of these are in fact in pretty nice shape. A lot of times the clear plastic turns yellow, and both types of plastic turn brittle. That does not appear to be the case here. And in fact, the remarkable thing is that based on the condition of the box, you'd expect the interior components to be basically wrecked. And I'm happy to report that that's not the case. And in fact, they're all pretty nice. And they don't, I mean, maybe a tiny, tiny, tiny trace of mildew, but really not much. So there's a rule book, a scenario book, and two charts and tables books. And this doesn't, I mean, it's unpunched, so I think we can safely assume it's unplayed. It looks like somebody looked through this with dirty hands. So there's a little bit of soiling on these, but I mean, nothing like particularly serious. The rule book is pretty thick, 56-page rule book for a SPI game. And it's pretty small print too. This is a fairly detailed game. This is, I would say, one of the top 5 games that SPI probably did in terms of complexity. That's, of course, a rough approximation, but I'm pretty sure it's probably an accurate statement. We have the various displays. There's a Japanese air display, and these are basically, I take these to be basically air bases, and then you put air points into the air bases or air squadrons or air groups or something like that. There's a general records track. There's one for the Allies, one for the Japanese. This would never get done this way now. It would be a 0 through 9, and you'd have two separate markers, one for decimal and one for single digits. Here we have an Allied Naval Task Force display, and this, like the books, shows some signs of soiling. War in the Pacific has an infamously complicated logistics system. It's one of the things that was discarded in the Decision Games revision of War in the Pacific, and it was, as much as people chafed at the logistics system in War in the Pacific, the one in Pacific War, which is not the focus of Pacific War, is less satisfactory, and that's basically what they used in War in the Pacific. You don't have names of ships on the counters, but on here you have an index of the battleships and carriers. Actually, cruisers too. You have BBs, BCs, CVs, CVLs, CVEs, CAs and CLs. Okay, so yeah, that's probably pretty much all of them. So you can look the names of the ships up on here. I don't know how often people will do that, but it's nice if you have like an after-action report going on. We also have a Japanese Naval Task Force display, which is very similar. Here's the names of some more Allied ships, though. You can tell there's more than the Japanese. And then here's the names of the Japanese ships. Not sure why they didn't just put it on the counters. In most cases, it would have fit. The maps, I think, because the maps are... Let me get the displays out of the way first. Here is the turn record track, and I think there's two of these. One for the Allies and one for the Japanese. And as you can see, we have what appear to be reinforcements on here. Much is made of the need to do mandatory refits of ships in this system. Here's a Allied air display. This is interesting. Very interested in seeing how this works. That's very interesting. There's an air/surface tactical display. Surface, and air surface. So depending on how your combat resolution happens in the battle space, this is going to determine which of these displays that you use. And then on the back of this, interestingly, we have designer's notes, actually, which is, they're not in the book. It just occurred to me, and I've been looking through the rules here. Here is the Japanese turn track, which has a much smaller number of reinforcements on it, you'll notice. We also have this. Now, I don't even know how important this is if you're not trying to play this with War in Europe. This Allied off-map movement display, so you could move things globally to the Pacific. So that's very interesting. And you have some holding boxes for the U.S. West Coast, which look like they're not like tied, four of them actually tied geographically per se. So it's not like one of them San Francisco, one of them San Diego, so on and so forth. There's just 1 through 4, and they all feed into West Coast USA. So that's interesting. And then we have the maps. Now the maps are a bit interesting in that I'm going to make the assumption that Redmond Simonson was the graphics person on these. That's probably an accurate statement. We're going to get a side view of this because this map goes to the side. They're printed on blue paper, and this is an interesting artifact of this sort of either 2-color or 4-color process that SPI, they're probably using 4-color at this point. In fact, I can tell you that because there's 4 colors on here. Process that SPI was using at the time. It wasn't what we would consider full color nowadays, and probably I don't think it was even called that then. It was called the 4-color process, and that's what comic books used. The maps, the creases are pretty hard, but are otherwise they show no sign of water damage whatsoever. The fact that they're printed on blue paper gives you some really sort of a weird color palette type of thing going on, where the open terrain is this gray. Obviously, it can't be blank, or everything would be blue. But you have, all of India here on this map, and even north up to the Himalayas. It covers a big area. We have a big chunk of the USSR here. A lot of space in Korea, big war in China going on. And there's not that many nationalist Chinese units, just looking at the counter sheets. So I'm not sure how that plays out. Again, hope to play this someday. So I'm going to stick with my statement that I don't buy these things to just have put on the shelf. These look really nice. These maps look really nice. Australia. We get pretty much all of Australia here. And this is a 7-map game. Unlike War in Europe, which I think is a 9 or 10 map game, so it's a 9-map game. So this is actually smaller in terms of map area. But as you can see, there's a lot of off-map displays. And we have counters that, once again, do not show any signs of water damage or other problems, and they don't even smell bad. So let's just give them a quick count. That's 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 14, 16, so 8 SPI counter sheets sounds about right. They're nice and crisp. I've always loved just the feel of SPI's counters. Because they're matte finish, they tend to soil fairly readily, and I have concerns about how they will wear. In this case, I don't intend to punch this right away, but I will punch it. Like War in Europe, we've got a number of these sort of identical counter sheets. So there's 2 of these, for example. These are the Japanese, and I'm not sure who these green units are. Are they Commonwealth? Interesting, I'm not sure. The white on green. The black on green are clearly Commonwealth. The white on green, I'm not sure. I don't see where it says that. The white on red are Japan, as you can imagine. And of course we have, there's a U.S. Allied sheet as well, where we have 2 of these. Yeah, and I'm not sure how well the color is coming across on the video, but the color on this is sort of a really vibrant royal blue that I really like. Japanese get orange, which is a fairly unconventional counter color for Japanese in war games. In some cases, there's this colored band across the units under the names, and it's sort of a dark gray, and the type is in black, and it's pretty hard to read the names. And they're probably aircraft types. Yeah, they're aircraft types. So these are the air units. Certainly not modern counters, but I have a fondness for the texture of SPI counters. So we have managed then to, in the span of a couple of weeks, thanks in part to the sale, I'll try and get this back in without wrecking anything, which gave me the funds to pick this up, we have acquired a copy of the other great theater level SPI Classic War in the Pacific. This was not particularly inexpensive, as you could imagine, an unpunched copy of War in the Pacific. I was concerned about what I saw in the pictures. I did buy this off of eBay, which was, clear water damage to the box, but fortunately the interior components do not particularly show that. And it looks really nice. So I would like to thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this nostalgic look back at an SPI Classic from 43 years ago. Click like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time. Until then, happy wargaming.